Hey there, name's Cuckoo. I think you've seen me around a few times. Well, I'm not gonna have much preamble. Let's just get right into it. I'm gonna show you here how to draw eyes. And I'm not gonna show you how to draw eyes in a way where, how do I say, it's like you're guessing at things. So I'm gonna start with just one thing here. I'm gonna show you how to, like, what are the parts of the eye? Then for the second thing, I'm going to show you how to construct an eye. And then the final thing is I'm going to show you the ways that we can build up to this knowledge, if that makes sense. So let's start with the eye. Let me just change my line color here. Okay, so the eye is, I think as far as these things go, pretty simple. You have a big old circle, but that's not a circle, it's a sphere, right? You got a sphere, you've got the iris in the middle, you got the pupil, right? So far so good. Iris, sclera, pupil. So what happens is the eye, while being a sphere, you don't see most of it, right? You have the tear glands that I'm just going to, for this, draw as a little circle. I like to use it as a place to measure things. You have, but you basically have from there the upper eyelids, and you can see how it wraps around the circle. This is why it's useful to think of the eye as not just a circle, but a sphere. It has volume, right? This eye has volume. And so we're going to wrap this line around the eye because the eyelid basically just covers it, right? And then on the other side, you have the other eyelid. Comes around the tear duct. You can see why that's useful. And then it wraps around here, but more importantly, look how it goes over the surface here and kind of tucks in under the lower, like the upper eyelid, right? So it goes up in there, and it looks something like this. Okay, so then the upper eyelid, I'm going to fade this a little bit so we can see a little better. It's about this size, right? But that's not just the eye, right? This is the, say, the part where we definitely consider the eye, but one thing that you often see is that there is another area around the eye that I find very important, and without it, you really don't have the full picture, and that's the eyebrow. So the eyebrow is predominantly built up on the, what's it called, like the eye hole in this call? The eye socket? Eye hole, that's definitely a thing. And I'm going to show you what happens around the eye and why it has this look, right? Here we have kind of like this mound of, I don't know if it's fat or muscles exactly. I am an artist, not a medicine guy, but the surface goes something like this, right? So it pushes out of the face, right? And then it kind of like thins out and ends at a point about here. Is that about right? Yeah. So it ends about a point right about here. And then from here, you have this kind of shape, right? It pushes out, and then it kind of softly just like sinks in here. So this area is like really not very, like this is a lot flatter. And then as you get here, it puffs out a bit. And this area here below, it's a little bit of shadow, right? That's what the part that really matters. Then from here, this part here is that one little corner. I don't know if you've seen in photos, where the eye, where just above the eye, you often see this area being like light, having some light casting over here. This wraps around and it goes all the way down here, right? To basically the cheek bone, right? And underneath the eye, following this lower eyelid, right, you have kind of the eye bags area, I think is how I usually call it, which looks kind of like this. So you have the, depending on the person and how old they are, this area really has a lot of mass, or it is completely flush with the rest, right? Depends on the person. And this here just goes into the cheek. So this is what that looks like, roughly. And I'm trying to draw just kind of like a grid here, just so that it's easier for you to visualize this, because when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm not really thinking about specific anatomy things. I'm thinking about the volume, right? The way that these areas combine into each other, right? Here, you kind of like have a really clean transition from this area. It goes right down here. And I think you see that often when people do 3D models. This is a common loop that they combine. There's something like this, goes in and behind the eyelid. This looks a little different on Asian people, where this area here, right, like this puffy area, it pushes way, way, way in, right? And it kind of combines sort of like this. And that makes their eyes look smaller, but their eyes are just about the same size as everybody else's. It's just when this area is covered, right, it feels like there is less eye because you see less of the eyelid, and the epicantheric fold, which is this part up here, covers everything, right? Okay, we're not talking about Asians, just free information for you there, right? So let's go back here. And then the final thing is just, and this is why I showed you this area before, because this part pushes out, right? And then here, it's kind of concave. It goes in. So this area gets shadow, right? This area puffs out, casts shadow. And on top of this is where you find your eyebrow. And if you want to draw some good looking eyebrows, you generally want your eyebrow to have its tail end above the head, right? So you can go a little bit further down, but try not to cross it. I find that it just looks nicer that way. And so you have your eyebrow here on top, and this guy looks like a monstrosity, right? Very detailed, very anatomical. Here is like the corner of the nose, right? Like this is a shape that I often look at because this is like the little bone between the two sides of the, like between the two eyebrows. It's kind of like a little wedge shape here. And then this is where it would go into the nose, which would go down here, but that's like way beyond the scope of this. But this corner here, right, like the way that this moves is basically the side of the nostril here that is pushing into it, right? So it wraps around and then the nostril follows. That's why these areas are all connected. Okay, but basically we have this going on when we're talking about the eyes, right? Pretend there's another eye here. Good. Sorry, needs an eyebrow. Right. So that's a lot of information. That's a lot of anatomy. But when you're drawing, and I find this especially in anime style and like semi-realistic, what you often see people do is this. They're going to draw an eye, and they draw the whole thing, right? And you can see that they do follow a lot of these rules, but they don't draw the whole thing, right? It's very obsessive to draw all of the anatomy details all in one go. It's easier to draw an eye that indicates those anatomy features. Sometimes there is like a little shadow down here to indicate the lower eyelid, right? You get a little bit of a shadow here on this corner that you soften up, make it look nice at the eyebrow, right? This eye still follows the exact same rules, and while from the front you may think that it's a little obsessive to know all of this, right? Like it's a lot of information. You don't need most of it, right? But when you're looking at it from the side, and I'm going to draw first the eye here. Look at this guy, right? When you're drawing an eye from the side, what happens is a lot of these shapes don't really match what you traditionally think of, right? And then if you're just drawing this eye without that extra knowledge, it can be really difficult to intuit what you should be drawing, right? Because all of this stuff is not really intuitive, because a lot of this information is hidden in these planes. And so when you try to copy someone who's been drawing for a while and they skip a lot of steps, you lose this, right? Because they are drawing with this whole anatomy model in their head, but they're not really showing you that, right? So even if you're watching a stream, that tends to not look the best, but basically what I mean by not look the best is like it tends to be confusing because it just feels like magic, right? Like the person just knows where to draw the line. So I'm going to show you how these lines work, and I'm going to start with the most important part, which is something that I talked about at the start. Let's just start here. The eye is a sphere, right? It has depth, and whenever you're drawing a sphere, don't be cheap. Give that corner a really nice curve, even if it takes you 20 lines. I know way too many people that skimp out on the rounding on them spheres, and it just really loses the illusion of depth. So take your time when you're doing cross contours on a sphere. And why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about cross contours on a sphere? Because this idea of wrapping around, starting here, going around the sphere, and ending on the other side. And you can see how like I'm pushing this curve. Drawing this curve is really important. Learning how to figure this out. And here's why. When you're drawing an eye, a lot of the lines that you're doing, especially for the two eyelids, are wrapping around the sphere. So you need to be very good at following that motion, right? Here, I'm like going over this area, so it's a little bit lifted, and then I'm wrapping around. See how I'm going around this? And I move my my pen, right? Going like this, just to really feel out that movement. And then when you go here, you go around again, and this helps you show what's happening, right? Because the two sides of the two eyelids, they kind of combine, right? Into one place, but this one goes over and the other one goes under. And that might not feel like a big deal, but think about it. When you're drawing this line, you have to end and cross over this one. And while this one, you just wrap around the eye itself. And then when you draw the eye, you get that. And from the front, that feels very obvious, right? So let's go back to that example that I drew in the corner. I'm going to draw a bigger one. The eye is going this way, and you can see that as you move over, right, this eye is also going to distort. The iris gets squished when it's closer to the edge. Not because it literally gets squished, but because we see less of it, right? So let's just leave this eye here for now. We're going to use it later. So now, where is the tear duct? It's behind. Remember, this is a 3D sphere. It's important to remember that. Told you. So this is a 3D sphere. And this sphere, it occupies space, right? So the tear duct is somewhere behind there. Oh, right? This is why the eye looks different when you draw it from a 3/4 or from the side. Because you don't see the whole motion, right? We're going to start around here because this is where the middle point of that eye is. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow. This time we're starting here, right? Let's just give it some thickness. And we're going to follow around the eye. But now we've reached the other side, right? And we would wrap around here, but you don't see that part. What you see is that the lashes push out because they have volume, right? Like they're pushing forwards. And I think you've seen this shape before if you've been drawing for a little while, right? Like this little triangle that happens here. And that's why that happens, right? Because you're wrapping around and then the eyelashes follow like this, right? So it creates this little shape and you see it. And you see a lot more of the eyelashes than you would. Obviously this is a little cartoony, right? But the effect is the same if you try to do it more realistically. So let's start underneath, right? Remember, it wraps around. And then go over here. And again, we're going to go over to that point and wrap around there. But we can't see it, right? So here, it's going to wrap around, and it's going to end here. And then this line that you see here, that's the eye. That's just the eye, right? So when you see this, you're literally seeing the side of the eye. And some people just don't draw it at all, right? But it's important to think about it, right? The eyelids have thickness and they wrap around the eye. And eventually, right, you get to a point where there's a little gap. And that gap really matters because when we're drawing this without drawing a whole sphere, I'm still following that idea, right? I'm still following that notion of how the eye works. I just have the sphere in my head. And so when you see me draw this, you're like, why? Sorry, it should be more like this. Why is the eye so weird? Right? Like, why is the line that you draw over here now? Because I'm drawing this covering, right? And so without this underneath information, it can be really difficult to understand where these lines are coming from. And I hope this helps. So let's take a look at this example. The middle point is around about here. So it would start somewhere here, right? Go around, and now we're just seeing half of it. And the other half all the way back there. And then we start underneath, remember? Very important. And we do the same. And you get that anime shape that you often see people draw with the eyes that looks kind of like this. Oh, it should go up, sorry. Okay, this, I'm just recording this ad lib because I felt like doing it, and I figured I might as well just get y'all something because I keep overthinking these videos, and I think this is a good motivation thing for anyone who wants to do things, but you always seem to have something more important. Because I know I do, right? I love making videos, I love teaching people, and then I always have something more pressing. I always have something I want to do first. I want to learn how to edit properly. I can't just make a video, can I? Well, evidently I can, right? But you get this kind of shape, is what I was saying. And this shape here is because you're looking at only half of the eye, right? The other half is hidden. You don't see it. You only see this area here. You only see a little bit of this area. And all of this is behind, right? And obviously, I don't expect you to draw eyes by starting with a sphere. But it can be a good tool when you're drawing a really hard angle, right? You're drawing an eye on someone from below. And so this is the bottom of the eye. And we're going to cast a little circle here so we can see. By the way, when I'm drawing these for you guys, I do draw quite dark, but I tend to be very subtle with these guidelines when I'm drawing for myself. Just something to keep in mind, right? A lot of times you see me drawing like this. You really shouldn't. You should draw a little lighter. And when I go to some of the examples, you'll see that I draw a bit lighter. But now we have the bottom of the eye here. And so logically, this is the front. And you can see how it's useful to try and really understand this, because the eye is not going to look like this, right? The same way that when the eye gets closer here, it looks like this. When the eye gets closer to here, it looks like this. So let's correct that. The eye is distorted by perspective. And so now, I think that becomes a lot easier, right? We're not going to see the top of the eyelid at all, but we do see the eyelid itself that's going to, like the lashes are going to go over this, right? And so we see a little bit of the lashes over the eye, right? Let's pick a side. I guess this side is going to be the side where like the tear duct is. And we're going to see the top of the, like the bottom of this eyelid here, under tear duct. And then what happens? The other one also wraps around. So which way is going to go? This way. Look. And then it tucks in underneath the other one, so it's going to go that way. And while eyes can be simple enough to draw, it's sometimes tricky to find a reference which is the right angle that you're looking for. You don't need that reference a lot of the times. You just need to think. I think one of the most important things when it comes to drawing is paying attention. This is a lot harder nowadays. We have so many things you can draw your attention, and it can be really difficult to properly pay attention to something, fully devote yourself to what you're doing. And I think and obviously this is a very big assumption of mine, if you find yourself not really able to focus, consider that maybe, are you really here right now? Are you listening to a podcast? Are you watching something on the side? Are you listening to music? Are you trying to look for fun outside of drawing while you're drawing? Because a lot of times, it's almost like we do the thing we want to do, but we do it so flippantly, right? Like we do it so, almost like we're forcing ourselves to do it. And that's not really healthy, right? Consider that. And if you're struggling with something while drawing, try devoting your attention to it, just honestly, not in a way of I'll do it because the YouTube man person told me, right? Consider your attention is the most valuable thing you have, and you should use it wisely. They say on a video on YouTube where people go to kill their attention, right? But hopefully you learned something from this. And so I think I've shown you number one, which is what it looks like. And I've shown you number two, which is the way that we use these shapes to get the rest of the eye. So let's go to number three, which is more fun, which is one, how to get to like an innate understanding of the eye. How to draw the eye without spending a lot of time thinking about it, right? And also how to stylize it, because these are very, let's say, realistic eyes, and that's not even the way I draw most of the time. Then if you guys are familiar with my work, I draw mostly furry creatures, and I draw them in kind of a semi-realistic style. So this is not the kind of eye I draw, but this is important because this is what I see, what I think about, right? So when I draw, say, like my little Sue, I will draw the eyes in a very cartoony way. Let me just flip here. But it doesn't really matter that it's cartoony because it still follows all of these principles, right? Then we get like something like this. And I'm not saying you need to draw this perfectly, but having this knowledge can help you not really struggle as much. I think what really makes art unfun is lack of understanding. Lack of that feeling where you think you're not sure where to go. And everything really feels, God, this circle's huge. Everything really feels like uncertain. And then to motivate yourself to move is really hard. And so I think this is a good way of going about it. And I know that studying these things really helps me. And so I'm trying to give back a little bit to y'all. Teach you something that maybe will help you enjoy art as well. Because we're in a weird age, right? I am motivated to teach art when people are going on about AI and all of these generative algorithms. And I'm not really that worried about it. And it's not that I'm arrogant or anything. For me, it's a very simple idea that I think the biggest crime that AI does is not to steal or to use works of art or to take from other artists or whatever. All of these things that it does that sucks, right? I think the biggest thing with AI is it turns the act of creation into consumption. And I really can't stand that, right? You go from the person who does a thing to a customer, to someone who idly watches something else creates for you, right? And I think humans, people need to create, need to write. Creation does us good. Creation keeps us healthy. It is a need as necessary as food. I think a lot of the numbness and depression I've gone through for a good while is directly tied to the idea that I kind of stopped creating. And so when I realized that creation is broader than just making art, this is creation too. Doing this video, sharing these ideas. And I know, I'm just yapping here. So let's finish up this video, yeah? I'll show you here how you can build up to this skill. And so let's start with the basics. Let me make a new page. Let's have some dark lines. If you can draw good circles, great. That's a very useful skill to have. I think being able to draw circles is one of the most important things in art. But if you can't do this well, then consider doing what I'm doing here. This exercise is just you move your pencil, your pen, whatever you're using, in circles, right? You kind of ghost the motion, and then you try to make a circle cleanly. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you're trying to be. The key here is you're aiming to do it right, but you're not expecting it to go right. You're going to go over it once, twice, 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. Get into a rhythm. Feel it. Don't overthink it, right? Like, don't try to make it perfect. I think that's the biggest thing. Just make circles. This will warm you up, but also the better you get at drawing circles effortlessly, the easier everything else will be, because a lot of the techniques that I use are built upon the idea of drawing ellipses, be it at an angle or more forwards, right? So if you struggle to draw ellipses at different angles cleanly, it's worth practicing, and it's honestly a fun exercise. I like doing this, just clear my mind, circle about, right? So this is, let's say, step 0. You need to be able to draw a good circle. So step 1, you're going to draw a circle. See, told you you need it. And then you're going to draw an ellipse over the circle. And you're going to pay attention to the corners. You're going to make it real nice. Your goal is for it to feel like it's 3D. And that may take you a little while, right? Try to go around the whole way at first. I like to draw only one side because I'm already used to it, but it's easier if you ghost it as if you're doing the ellipses that you're just practicing. Make the circle, ellipse, ellipse. The only rule here is that these need to have a 90-degree angle between them. Can't just do this and then this, because that tends to not really work as well. And it also trains a little bit of precision for you. So you're going to do that. You're going to train them ellipses, because being able to curve the line around is critical. So you're going to practice that. And as you're practicing these two, you're going to move to step 2, because I know nobody wants to sit here and draw circles all day before they feel ready. Like that's the entire thing that I was talking about earlier, yeah? So the step 2 is going to be this. You're going to draw your circle here. You're going to imagine that it's a sphere. You're not going to need to draw the sphere, because that can pollute the drawing, right? And then you're going to draw the iris like this. Let's make some eyeballs. This will train you to kind of like think of this as a sphere, even when you don't have any indication that it is. The rule here is that the eye, like the iris, squishes towards the side that you are turning to, right? So as you get closer to the edge, it gets real thin. As you get towards the middle, it gets bigger and rounder. Okay? We're gonna just plop down a bunch of eyeballs, like as if you're a serial killer. Wonderful, right? Good imaging. I swear, I'm just artist, okay? So then you're going to take all of these eyes and you're going to draw 2 lines, just like we talked about, right? Draw a little circle here to help guide you, and then go over, around, and again, we're curving over this form. Get that little corner in there, then inside, tuck it in, right? Start here, go out. I like to do like a little curve here, because here is, before it touches the eye, it has this kind of like circle shape, and then it pushes into the eye itself. You can do your style later, right? Right now, let's just try to draw some good eyes. That's all you need to do. We're going to start here, wrap around, go around the shape. See how important that is? Draw the rest, go around, finish it up. This one, it should be going upwards, right? Because it's gonna tuck in there. We like tucking it in there. Don't take that out of context. So this is step 3. You're going to go and draw these lines over these eyes. Turn them into proper eyes, right? Try to do some tricky angles. You can do that, or you can also just try to draw it from the front, but push it so that the iris appears. You'd be surprised at how often people do these kinds of expressions. There's someone looking extremely up, like turning their eye, right? And you can see that as you do this, you're going to get comfortable with the idea of curving around, following through, feeling the motion, right? And this will start to become simple, right? And then what we're going to do, take away the training wheel. We're going to draw the iris. And then you're going to curve around that line. And I'm telling you to draw the iris first because it reminds you of what we've been doing, right? You don't actually have to. You can always just start with the upper eyelid, then get the lower eyelid, and then decide where your character is going to look. But I always draw my iris through the eyelids. That's something I've always learned, right? I find that that really helps me get a good look to the eye, right? Because without it, you can kind of get lost in how the geometry and everything goes, right? So once you've gotten here, I would say you probably accomplished your goal, right? You can draw cute little anime eyes. You can see that even in anime eyes that have this thing, what is this line if not tucking it in there, right? Like tucking it up to the side. And then you have like the little eyes here, the big old iris, right? And then this area is super thick. But you can see that this works for that, right? This works for really stylized eyes where even you can even squish that eye, right? Because some people draw like these really crazy long eyes that look really nasty and just kind of like mean. And there's no real rules here, right? I think the biggest lie that we tell ourselves is that there's a right way. There's a proper way to use these things. I think you should follow anatomy, but how far you bend it is entirely up to you. You can draw something simpler, right? Obviously all of this is going to be tinted by my style, but I hope I'm giving you a good indication of where the limit is, right? Like where you can go with this. And then I'm going to show you how you get the rest in there, right? I like to start with, so when I'm drawing eyes, if I start with the eye, I'm going to get the eye in there, right? And then I get the other eyelid. This is a very open eye, which is kind of cool, right? It's like super open. We're looking at it from the side, right? Okay. So from here, you follow along and think about the eyeball, right? Like the eyeball is right here. So the design takes around, again, very important concept here. And then we get that fold in there, right? And then you do the same on the bottom. Follow it, right? It's following the eye, and so should you. Okay. So here, I like to follow this line here and draw kind of like a circle. I don't finish it, I just follow it around and then push it forwards. You have a little peak here, and then it goes forwards for the eyebrow, right? And here is that area that goes in. Here is the area that wraps around. You can see it also wraps around the eye. Interesting, huh? But you don't need to draw any of this. I think it's just worth to keep in mind. I like to put a shadow here and a shadow here if you're going to shade it, right? If you come this far, you might as well shade it, yeah? And then from here, I pull out that line for the corner of the eye. I don't always draw it, but if I'm shading something, right? This is the area I'm going to leave unshaded. This little line up and over the corner of the eye. Okay, so let's do that from the front, because that's a weird angle. And I don't want you to think it's way too hard, because it's not. It's just patience and habit. That's all it is. See here? Get that eye in there. Now watch. We put in the eyelid number 1, eyelid number 2. I'm gonna cut it. I like to work with tones like this sometimes, because it just helps me think. It's not really necessary, and it's not even like realistic a lot of the times, but it helps me see, and that's good. So now here, we're going to add that little bump on the corner, wrap around, go all the way, remember? Up to a peak, and then forwards, right? Here is where this area catches a little bit of shadow, and here you get a little bit of shadow. If you're feeling fancy, you can even blur this a little bit. Just remember to remove shadow from here, right? This is that canal that we were talking about. Goes down there. If your character has big eye bags, this is where they sit. I've shown you where that goes, but I think to get really specific, you would need some good photo references, right? And here is the rest of the cheekbone. So what does that look like when I'm actually drawing? Something like this. Draw, draw. You can see that I draw very light when I'm doing stuff like this, right? You can see I don't really follow that exact recipe, but I'm thinking about it, right? Go up to that peak, and then back a little bit. Get that eyebrow nice and thick, because he's lifting the eyebrow, right? Push this to be darker, nicer looking. Tuck in properly. Give him an iris. People like those. And then if you're feeling spicy, you can follow through from the upper eyelash here into this little corner here to indicate the tear ducts. And then we can give him just a little bit of shading here and here, and then maybe some here. That feels like too much. And you can wrap this around to create that fold. Darken it over here because it's wrapping around. If there's one thing you take away from this video, is this idea of wrapping around. Okay? And with that, I think I'm going to wrap around this video. I hope you learned something. I'll see you guys when I make another video, which might be tomorrow, might be in 7 months. So, subscribe. Bye.